I'm Jon McCarty with Odyssey Test Prep, and we've got a caller in today. Did you want to use a fake name today? Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, the internet connection has been a little unstable, but I can definitely hear you now.
Okay, fantastic. And what name would you like to go by today?
Any name that you'd like to assign me?
Okay, is AP okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Those are my initials. Totally fine.
Perfect. All right, so yeah, fill me in on kind of what's going on with you for the LSAT, where you're at in your journey, and I'll give you as much advice as I can.
Yes, sure. I definitely do appreciate the opportunity, to give you some background. I've already taken the test twice, and I, saw this opportunity to, use it to, discuss some of the difficulties that I feel that I might have, encountered as well, and might be valid for other test takers as well. And from your introduction, obviously you're someone who mastered the test, and it will be great to discuss all these points with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss them with you. Yeah, I've been teaching the test for over a decade. Lots of changes during that time, but it's always exciting to help people get to their goal score. So, do you mind telling me a little bit about like your testing history, like what your scores have been, what your goal is, maybe what your timeline looks like going forward, and then that way I can kind of have the full context of what you're looking to accomplish.
Sure. Yes. So when I started my preparation, I didn't have like a specific target goal score, but I definitely, wanted to score as high, as possible. Um, and after my first attempt, I scored initially like a 150.
Okay.
And actually, like I saw like the diminishing returns sort of play in after my second attempt, and instead of scoring higher, I ended up scoring lower. And I did also notice that I'm not I'm not alone in terms of this happening to somebody, right? Yep. So after that, my strategy was to sort of target specific questions, and instead of only focusing on full lengths and practice sections, sort of break the test into different types of questions, and try to go over as many explanations as I can for incorrect answers. Try to fix as much errors as possible. So yeah, that's some background.
Okay. Yeah. And then I guess as far as looking forward, do you have a goal in mind now that you've kind of gone through this process a little bit? And when are you planning on retaking? How many months do we have until you think you'll sit again?
Yeah. Actually, we're not that far. I'm only a couple of days ago from the third attempt because I don't have enough time, to keep on preparing for months again.
Okay.
Yep, because it definitely impacts the admissions cycles.
Yeah.
So I thought over it, and instead of delaying the admissions process by another year, I thought of taking the test sooner rather than later.
Sure.
Yep. So, but as I mentioned, I've been trying all those things. So one of the things that I have encountered, is that it's very difficult to let's say target specific logical reasoning subtypes, because I've noticed that there's a lot of variation in content, right? So you might be able to get like a type of question wrong, in some tests, and you might be getting that subtype correct and instead getting like a different subtype wrong in other tests. So I've made these subtype score sheets, and
Okay.
I noticed that there might be some consistency to it, but not a lot. So it's very hard to, let's say, target the weaker subtype questions. Is that something that you've heard of before? And how have you how did you
Yeah.
overcome?
Yeah, and it is hard, like there's going to be certain times in the study process where you're just weak on certain question types. And then you go in and you learn a lot about those question types and you get those points back. From what you're describing, it's kind of, kind of this rotating situation of like, all right, well, I was weak here and then I focused there and then I became weak there. And it feels like you're almost kind of playing whack-a-mole a little bit because you can't really target one specific question type. Have you run these through any sort of analysis that look at the difficulty level of each individual question that you missed?
Yes. Obviously, it's the difficulty levels for the questions I missed is like you know 3 or 4. But I'm not surprised. When I looked at, okay, once in a while I also get a question for lower difficulty incorrect.
Okay. Yeah, and I would start with those questions of lower difficulty because you're probably pretty close to getting those correct. So if you see like a difficulty level 2 or even like a pretty easy 3 popping up, you're going to be closer to getting those right than the difficulty 4 questions. So at this point, when the test is only a few days away, trying to shore up the easier questions, the question where the gap is smaller between where you are and being able to get the question correct. And maybe it's a simple mistake that you made and just putting in some fail safes to prevent you from making simple mistakes. Like sometimes it's, you see the accept and then you forget about it halfway through the answer choices and you mess up the question that way. But maybe highlighting the word accepted. That's just an example, but we can go into like some more specific details on where you think you're missing the most questions. But if it's not question type specific, then focusing in on the easiest questions that you're missing and trying to get those questions back is going to be your best bet. What's your process for logical reasoning look like? Like when you approach a question, are you doing question stem, then stimulus? Are you doing stimulus and question stem? And then like as you read through, what are you thinking? Like what are some of the things, what's part of your process here? Just kind of describe it to me.
Yep. So again, when I was practicing, different subtypes. At that point, yep, I do definitely take a couple of minutes to sort of follow the relevant strategy. Let's say let's take assumption questions for example, right? At that I would read the question stem, you know, uh, break the argument into different parts, identify the conclusion, trying to find the gap between the stimulus and the conclusion, and sort of predict my assumptions from there. But during the actual section and in an attempt, I there's barely time to to understand the question and each option. So I don't focus on methodologically breaking the question, but rather than understanding and sort of because I know that that strategy is I know that strategy, so I don't focusing on uh, breaking it as per the rules of the book, but at the time when I'm taking the test, it's more of like understand it as fast as possible and then get to the right answer as fast as possible. Um, with that being said, I also sort of um, focused more on the first 20 questions, and to see to see if that that helps me in getting at least some more questions right. But I believe like even if I go with the mindset that I have to do the questions as fast as possible, um, that's sort of working out better because when I'm taking more time to just focus on the first 20 questions, that hasn't really helped me. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and at this phase of the game, you definitely have to go with what's yielded the highest score for you. So it does sound like moving faster is yielding the better result. So sticking with that, but maybe selectively. When I think of the section, um, I think of it almost more as, instead of like a sprint, I think of it as like high intensity interval training, like a hit workout type of thing, where like you're sprinting and then you're pulling back and going slow, and then so it's like this like quick oscillations between like fast and slow and fast and slow. And where I tend to recommend going slow, and what has worked for me, is like going slow when you're reading the stimulus, when you're identifying the conclusion. You can go pretty fast to identify the conclusion. That should be pretty automatic for you right now. But going slow through that and then predicting, and then once I hit those answer choices, that's when I really try to sprint a little bit more, because I know what I'm looking for. I'm already prepped. I really feel like I understand the stimulus. I don't have to double read it, which ends up saving a lot of time. And then I should be in a position where I can then fire through the answer choices and get to the right answer very quickly, because that's where people lose most of their time. It's not in the reading of the stimulus. If you read it a little more slowly, you're talking like a few seconds difference. It feels like a lot, but as you're doing it, but it's actually not that much. And when you get to the answer choices, you can save 30 seconds, 45 seconds by not having to debate between two answer choices. You caught that little subtlety in the stimulus that made the sucker choice not that attractive, and you're able to eliminate that and get to the right answer choice quicker. So maybe try, instead of like one speed, that you have like two speeds that you're like switching gears back and forth between. And try it on like a section or something and see what the result is. If the result is better, then stick with it. If the result is worse, then revert back to the thing that's working best.
Yep. No, I definitely do understand what you're saying. Saving that time on eliminating the non-attractive or wrong answer choices. By spending a few extra seconds on reading the stimulus. But I've also noticed that a lot of times, for let's say trick questions, where there are two, almost equally attractive options, right? So actually debating between, like two answer choices, has helped me, get to the right answer for some type of questions. And yep. And in those cases, it's sort of harder to, let's say, not being able to save, those extra seconds on the answer choices. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's the areas where you have the biggest opportunity, is when you get down to two answer choices, finding a way to make that debate shorter. So what I'll usually do, if I get down to two and they both look great, but there is something wrong with the wrong answer choice, and it's something tangible that if you see it, you'll know it, but it's hidden really well, right? Because they're really good at doing that. So a lot of times I'll go back up and I usually have the first word of the conclusion highlighted, and then I'll reread the conclusion really quickly, because there may be some little tidbit in that conclusion that can help me break the debate really quickly. And if there is, great, then I break the debate. I got the right answer choice and I'm moving on. Other times I'll use trends of the LSAT to get to high probability answer choices. Like if I'm on a must be true and I have two answer choices and one of them says some and the other one says most, and they both look pretty good, I'll choose the some one and flag it and come back, because you're almost always going to do better with a softer answer choice on a must be true question than a stronger answer choice. So like little things like that, if you can utilize those to break some debates, can be helpful.
No, I do definitely agree. Like looking, weak qualifiers are definitely something to notice in must be true or must be supported questions, or
Yeah,
most supported. I'm sorry.
or
Um,
strongly supported.
yep, and this also applies to other question types. You know, like let's say for the flawed questions, a lot of times, it's easier to eliminate answer choices which are pointing a specific flaw in like a word, which we know, like, is not the right answer most of the times. Um, yep, and um, but then again, like, this doesn't sort of this makes me reconsider, or not reconsider, but like consider all the options at least once. Coming back to what we were discussing um, earlier of saving those extra seconds by not looking at all the answer choices, where applicable.
Yeah, and that's another area where it's like how you look at them and the speed at which you look at them is determined by various factors on the exam. So if I'm on question number 2 and I read the stimulus, I understand it perfectly. I know what's going on here. There's this conditional statement that needs to be added into the argument. And it's necessary assumption. I know I've got my conditional in hand. I see that conditional in answer choice A. At that point, maybe I read all of them. I probably do, but I'm not going through each one and thinking of its merits and seeing if it works. If I'm in that kind of high degree of certainty, I'm like 99% certain everything along the way has been ticking all the boxes of certainty that I'm looking for. Right? I understood the stimulus. I know where the conclusion is. I know exactly what kind of question type this is. I've predicted what the answer choice is, and I see that answer choice in the answer choice and is worded the exact way that I want it to be worded. I will fly through the rest of those answer choices, and if nothing screams at me, stop, I'm reading as fast as I can possibly read through those. Now, if I'm there and I have 80% confidence, I'm going to read pretty quickly, but I may be looking for something like, kind of have a little bit more of a high alert. If I'm only like 50% sure I got there, I'm reading each answer choice pretty intensely and seeing how it connects and interacts with the argument above, and does it do the thing that I wanted to do, and does it match this prediction that I was kind of thinking of. So having different gears that you can shift into, that there's no one right pace to go through everything. And skipping the rest of the answer choices, if you're reading them or not, really depends on your strategy and like your confidence in whether you have the correct answer choice or not. But there have been times where I've been very confident that I had the right answer choice. Then I saw another answer choice. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. And I was like, oh, shoot, I missed that word. It's actually this answer choice. And it has saved me for a few questions where I thought I had a high degree of confidence, and it turned out another answer choice kind of screamed out like, hey, hold on, there's this other thing going on here that I didn't see. And it was worth reading them, but reading them very quickly to see if something popped.
Right, and then you end up like debating the two answer choices.
It depends. Yeah. So if something if I think I'm at the right answer choice, if something else pops, usually it says something about the other answer choice. Like, oh, you didn't see something here because you didn't consider this, or you thought something else was going on. And then I'll look for really specifics. Like, does it have the kind of wording that I need, like strong or soft language? Does it have like the elements from the conclusion that I was looking for, or is it doing the thing that I was hoping for it to do? And then, but it should be a pretty quick debate, because you may see it and be like, oh, that looks attractive, but I see, no, mine still does exactly what I want it to do. Or you may be like, oh, this looks attractive, and I think it could be right because mine doesn't do the thing that I thought it did because of this. And then, but like making that debate as short as possible is super key. And having a really good grasp on the stimulus, specifically the conclusion, is the way to help you shorten that debate time.
Yep. No, I definitely agree. And what's your what's the IELTS strategy you recommend to target, as I was talking earlier, to target the questions you're missing and correct those errors.
Yeah,
'Cause,
really, section work and practice tests are going to be the thing that reveal those to you. And taking, a lot of people will like to do blind review as part of that to help them understand, was it a timing issue or is it really a deep understanding issue? And if it's a
Mhm.
timing issue, then you focus on the timing aspect of it. If it's more of a conceptual content issue, then you focus there. So that can help you kind of break those two. Do you do any blind review?
What do you mean by a blind review?
So blind review would be like where you take a section and you do it timed,
Hmm.
35 minutes if you're taking normal time. And then you don't check the answers. And then you review that section. You go through untimed and you go through each question that you had done in an untimed manner and see if you get to the same answer untimed as you do timed. And then you grade both of them and see how far apart your scores are timed versus untimed. This can really help you identify, like if you missed it while it was timed, but you got it right when it was untimed, those are questions you're really close to getting. Like you have the frameworks to get there, you just didn't quite bring them up in the amount of time that you had. So you can kind of close those gaps pretty quickly. And those would be the questions I'd focus on for now, because that can help you diagnose, like, all right, I'm one step away from getting those right. But if you missed it timed and then you also missed it completely untimed, there's something deeper that's going to take more than a few days for you to unpack with questions like that.
Yep. No, I definitely, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I did a lot of this, a lot of the blind reviews as part of like my initial test prep. And what I had
Mm-hmm.
noticed early on was that my score weren't like significantly different.
Okay.
When I was doing the sections in a timed manner, than when I was doing it, in an untimed manner. And
Okay.
Yep. So the reason that I'm bringing this up again is because coming back to the point that I made initially, you look at some subtypes, right, that you have missed. You read the explanations. You go back and at this point, like the strategies by heart, right, or like have like at least like a higher level understanding of what the strategy of each subtype looks like. Even though if you might not remember like the tiny details of like how exactly each formal logic um, lays out. So you go back, you read the explanations, and then you go back taking another section, and the content of the questions is completely different. So
Right.
you know Yep. So let's say, again, like let's say for you know for a simple example, what might be assumption questions. I know what the strategy for an assumption question is, right? I can sort of predict the assumptions by looking at the stimulus. I also know that some of the questions, wasting time on making the prediction might not work out because the question might be structured in a way that it's very hard or almost not possible to predict the answer choice. And reading each answer choice would be more helpful in sort of getting to the right answer. um, and I missed a question like that. I read the explanation, but reading that explanation, understanding it, is helping me, for that specific question, right?
Right.
Already have been holding that strategy in me, and taking that explanation or to another section is not necessarily leading to correcting those errors or getting those right answers that I'm sort of missing.
Yeah. Yeah. And reading explanations can give you some clarity, but unless you do it in a way that is really like reflective on yourself and your process, there's still a lot left. And you'll feel the way that you're feeling, I think, which is, hey, all right, if I saw this exact question again, I would get it right. But I'm not really taking any much from this question to be able to go see it in a different context or on a different question, or like it's not really making It's not leading towards improvements in my score because I'm never going to see that exact question again. So this is kind of where working with other people can be really good, whether it's a study group or it's a tutor. But you can do this yourself too if you don't have access to either of those two things. The thing that you're looking to do is find out why you missed that question. Right. So not to know what the reasoning in the question is and why the right answer is right and the wrong answer is wrong. That's all really good stuff to do, but it's not all of it. The other thing you have to do is say, well, where did I mess up? Where did this take a turn? Did I misinterpret the conclusion? Did I not isolate the conclusion? Did I think this was a sufficient assumption when it was actually a necessary assumption question type? Right? Was there something in the question type? Did I predict something? And do I now, upon reflection, feel that was a good prediction? Or do I feel like upon reflection that was a poor prediction and that led me down this road that took me to the wrong answer choice? Or was it in the answer choice there was a specific word that made this answer choice incorrect and the correct answer choice correct? And so I need to adjust to how I'm... so you need to find the area that you need to make adjustments because there's all these different places where it could have broken down for you. And reading an explanation is never going to tell you where it broke down for you. So if you don't know where that is and you can't go back and work on that specific skill, right? If you didn't isolate the conclusion and you like picked an answer choice that was just kind of like far out there, then it's simple. You can go back and you can start isolating conclusions and be really regimented about that and then that will translate to future questions that you won't be making that fundamental mistake that you made, which was not knowing what the conclusion said or where the conclusion was. So you need to find like the fundamental thing that you did wrong and that you can correct and then put in take the steps to correct it. Does that make sense? Do you understand kind of like the difference of approach?
Yes. No. It does completely make sense. And yeah, I do, definitely, like my focus while reading explanations is sort of, going back, to the question itself and trying to understand, why I missed it, and breaking down that what I could have done differently if a similar situation arises. But then again, like I hardly notice, a similar thing happening again, coming back to the difference in content. For example, I recently, I was looking at one of the explanations a couple of days ago, and it was a question about, it was an assumption question. It was about like the time. It was about the reasoning. It was actually a strengthening weakening question, right? It was about the reasoning behind why it takes longer for drivers to park out of a parking spot, right? And it was the type of question where I had two answer choices left and I picked the incorrect one, right? And when I was reading the explanations, it sort of completely made sense to me. I understood what I had missed in picking in not picking the correct answer. But let's say I like I did not encounter like a similar situation. For example, yep, I did not encounter a similar situation again, like because another strengthening or weakening questions that I might have got like wrong a couple of days ago was a passage that was related to, let's say, anthropology and dinosaurs, right? So yep. So I'm not trying to like question the strategy. What you're saying is definitely the right way to go. I definitely agree that, and after you have said it, I would try to implement that more. But I certainly do feel that myself and maybe everybody else, it's definitely it's easier or it's faster to understand some type of content, and it takes longer to understand some different type of content. For somebody, might be, for someone it might be easier to understand scientific passages, faster, while somebody might understand the humanities passage faster.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely, still like trying to like understand how to, break the gap, uh, that a different type of contents create, in terms of, you know even after like I, or we have understood that what I specifically did wrong. An easier example here, based on what you said, right? Uh, there was one of the assumption questions that I couldn't understand completely, right? And I
Right.
noticed that my lack of understanding, and it was not like a very super, it was not a super hard question. So I noticed that there was actually a part in the passage which was, irrelevant, redundant. So if I would read
Yeah.
the passage hiding that specific part, right,
Hmm.
answer would, automatically, I would guess the answer automatically, right? It was that
Yeah.
redundant or irrelevant part that was making it tricky to understand the question and to get to the right answer choice. Once I hit that,
Yeah.
it made sense completely. But
Yeah.
for me to identify that irrelevant parts of, different assumption questions or a similar type of question, again, would, depend on the content.
For sure. And that is a skill that you can build, is recognizing what's relevant. And a lot of times, especially on must be true questions and yeah, necessary assumption questions, they can throw in like stuff that's not part of the argument, and they're not relying on to get to the conclusion. Or on must be true questions, they will throw a bunch of junk at you, and maybe the first sentence has a conditional that links with the last sentence's conditional, and they throw like in like a junk conditional in the middle that doesn't actually link to anything, and you have to, like, part of it is cutting that sentence out and focusing on what is relevant. So that's definitely a skill that you can build, and part of that is in your argument analysis. You say, all right, well, here's the conclusion, what's their support for the conclusion, those are the premises. And then so like that's the part where that question broke down, was, all right, you had the conclusion but you didn't understand what the premises were in support of that conclusion, because there was some irrelevant or redundant information that you were letting slide in, because not every sentence is automatically a part of the argumentation towards the conclusion. So now, like, here's an area where I can start to build the skill of figuring out what's relevant and what's not relevant. If I have a must be true and two conditionals link and one conditional doesn't, the one that doesn't link is probably irrelevant. Now, they may test it, but it's not what I'm looking for. I know that it's kind of out on an island by itself, and I have stuff that actually is connecting up over here. And same thing with an argument. All right, I've got the conclusion. These two premises seem to be in support of this conclusion. There's still gaps there, but this sentence doesn't seem to be doing anything, or it just seems like filler, or it's really trying to just kind of bloat the stimulus, so that I end up missing the fact that these two premises are the thing that's being used to identify this conclusion, or to support the conclusion. So it's good that you know like exactly where that broke down, because it wasn't in the answer choices, it wasn't in the question stem, it wasn't in isolating the conclusion. It was really in what premises support this conclusion. You had mentioned the parking spot one. I'm familiar with that question. So on that previous one, where did you find? You said once you like knew what the right answer was and you read it, it was obvious. But where in that question would you say that you made the mistake? Because there's a couple of places in that question where students usually make the mistake. But I'd be interested if you've done the analysis to see, like, all right, where did that one go wrong for you?
Yes. So what had happened was, that I was more attracted to the correct answer, and which was about the fact that, from what I remember, if I remember correctly, was that, the more pressurized drivers felt, to do like their maneuvers with their cars, the longer it took them to perform those maneuvers, right? And I was attracted to that choice. And then but I ended up picking up the incorrect choice, which actually was also very similar, right? Which said that it takes longer for drivers to park out of a spot, whenever another car is nearby. So after doing the short analysis, uh, uh, with the help of the explanations, so the incorrect answer is actually not accounting, for not accounting for the fact that it actually takes longer for drivers to park out of the spot when a car nearby or a driver nearby gets impatient, like when a driver honks or something like that happens,
Right.
right? And which is completely true. Yep. But yep, go ahead. So I had
Yeah, I was
the
going to say, so
answer
again,
choice. Mhm.
yeah, that detail that you missed, which was really the honking versus the non-honking, because in both situations there was still a car nearby, right? So we didn't have this like difference in those two things, but those details were given in the premises of the stimulus. So if we look at where things went wrong in that question and where things went wrong in your other question, both of those uh, occurred in like the details of the premise. So that's an area where maybe you're going a little bit too fast and you might want to slow down in the premises, because even though those are two different question types, two very different scenarios. One's very easy to understand, like parking in a parking lot, right? Everybody gets that. Versus, a different one that maybe was more technical or more science oriented, and it was, a harder concept to understand. But I think both of those questions came down to the details in the premises and how those related to the conclusion that they were drawing. So that may be an area where that focusing in on that, slowing down, doing a little more analysis there. And you want to test that, see if you slow down there, if that helps, or do a little bit more analysis in that area if that helps you move in the correct direction.
Mm-hmm. You mean spending a few extra seconds on over the stimulus?
Yeah, and specifically in the premises of the stimulus.
Right.
One, knowing what's relevant, and then picking up some of those key details out of or out of the premises, and then doing maybe a little bit more of an analysis on like what could be going on to get to the conclusion that they're trying to get to. But and both of those examples, the details that you needed were in the premises, and a little bit of a deeper analysis on the premises would have probably yielded you the correct answer. In one case, it was just a detail of honking versus non-honking. And the other case, it was really the detail of, this piece of information is irrelevant and you just needed to recognize that so you could put it all together.
Right. No. Yeah, thanks for specifically, going over these examples. Makes more sense, and yeah, I do agree that understanding why a test taker, or like in this case myself, like got the incorrect, chose the incorrect option, the answer, rather than understanding the explanation thoroughly is definitely the better way to go.
Yeah, and for you, spend some time in those premises. A lot of people, they don't isolate the conclusion, and then as soon as they start doing that, they're like, "Oh wow, all the question types got a lot easier because I'm like really focused in on this conclusion." It sounds like you're doing a pretty good job there. It's just kind of then going, upstream a little bit and looking at those premises and doing a little bit of analysis there. I think would make a pretty big difference on all question types for you, at least the ones that contain arguments. Do you find that? Like how do you do on question types that don't contain arguments, like must be true questions? Or, let's just talk about those. Do you find that you consistently do well there, or do you find that that's kind of like hit or miss as well?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to understand your question. Like, are you saying that do I consistently do well on must be true questions or not?
Yeah. Do you consistently do well on them?
So I won't say like I am consistently doing well, but so the issue is like when I look at this, when I generate reports, I don't, the must be true questions are that's not like the subtype what LSAC uses, right? I believe it's part of, I can be wrong. Is it part of deductions and inferences?
It would be inferences. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So yeah, I would say it's this it's not like better or worse of the other question types that we're discussing. Again, depending on the content, the level of difficulty, and all those
Sure.
factors come into play.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And must be true questions can kind of be seen as the argument being broke into two separate areas where they give you the premises and then you're finding the conclusion, because a valid conclusion is also a valid deduction or a valid inference or something that must be true. All of those things would apply. So if you think of that as like the stimulus is your premises and then the answer choice is your valid conclusion that follows logically from those premises, if you're struggling on those inference questions or deduction questions and it almost is always a struggle with the information that they gave you, because if you had that information super tight, the answer choice is pretty obvious. So usually it's in that area that would be what the premises would be if you were to reconnect this into a singular argument. As it stands, it's just the facts, and the facts support the conclusion. But if you think of that logically, well, if these facts support this conclusion, these facts must be premises for that conclusion. So you may find that it's the deep understanding of those statements where things are going off track for you, but like check into that and see. But I would suspect that that's where some of the points are being lost, at least. Have you done much analysis on like why you missed some of the must be true questions that you missed?
Yeah. No, I haven't. I can't think of like a thorough analysis of a must be true question on the top of my head right now.
Okay, and that's fair. One thing to do that you might want to do too is like keep a little journal of not just what the mistake was, but like where did the mistake occur. And so we've done two questions, and we would say like, all right, the mistake occurred in the premises and the mistake occurred in the premises. So we're starting to see like a pattern of at least where the mistake is occurring. So then you know where to focus your energy when you're on test day. And if you get stuck in between like two answer choices, instead, you may go back to look at some of the details in the premises, because those are some of the details that slip through for your specific case. But again, you want to trial all of this stuff in at least like a section or two and see if see what works and what's going to be useful for test day, because you don't want to change too much before test day.
Yep. No, I do agree. To be honest, like after like doing all the stuff that I've been doing, I haven't seen like a lot of significant difference in my numbers since what they were initially. But I still have some time and still trying to see whatever I can do to the best of my ability at this point.
For sure. How many points have you gone up so far from your initial diagnostic? Do you have a number?
I am still in the same initial, I would say, like score range that I was
from your very first diagnostic, like pre-studying.
Yep. I've always been in that range of like 150 to 156, and when let's say when I really do bad, then I drop below like a 150 as well.
Okay.
But, yep. So I have noticed that like even on like my better attempts, I am sort of towards the higher side of that range, and when I've not done well, then I'm on the lower end or even below that range. So but that has been consistent despite of the number of practice tests I've taken, any explanations I've looked, any blind reviews I've done, and after sort of reading specific strategies and then sort of isolating different types of questions. But yep, I'm still trying to so what I'm aiming at this point is to actually I mentioned to you earlier that I was trying out to just focus on 20 questions because I'm really trying to have like at least a consistent score in the LR
Yeah.
sections, because
Yeah.
that might be the key to like jump to like a maybe a 160. Because what I've noticed is like I'm capable of at least scoring like a 20 or like a 19 or 20 on an LR section, but that
Hmm.
doesn't happen consistently. That's the
Yeah.
reason why I was rather thinking of only focusing on 20 questions, maybe spend a couple of minutes past uh answer questions 20. um uh but yep. Mhm.
And you said as you've trialed that though, that hasn't really quite yielded the results that you were looking for. Is that right? Or
Yep,
do you feel
because
like you just haven't honed it in?
what ended up happening was that like uh yeah, it didn't work out well.
Yeah, and what you've told me also of your blind review results would indicate that faster is probably better for you. Like if your timed results are very close to your untimed results, then slowing
For
down is
sure.
really not going to do much for you, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
It's been the
keeping
same
the
when I
pedal
was
down.
Mhm. When I was doing the when I was and this is the time when I was like just initially starting off with the test prep. um so yep, I was almost getting the same number of questions correct uh when I was doing that in an untimely fashion.
Yeah,
um then when I was doing, and this also applies to sort of my initial diagnostic. When I did it in an untimely fashion, my score range was still same. Obviously, I scored higher, right? Because I
yeah,
didn't, but the score range was still almost the same. It was not, there were not significant differences in that. Yep.
yeah. So probably moving faster is going to be your better strategy for test day. There's also um, the yeah, if your accuracy is not changing a ton timed versus untimed, then you probably just want to um, keep it moving. And if your goal is to get 20 questions right, if you only do 20, the margin for error is pretty low.
Hmm.
And usually there's a couple of pretty hard questions there in that 13 to 20 range that
Yep.
are gonna hurt you, right? So,
Mhm.
but then you'll guess on the last five, which will usually get you one question, statistically.
Mhm.
But I mean, as far as like your raw potential, we usually see people's potential is about 20 points up from their start. So if you started at a 150, we would expect you, after 3 to 5 months of diligent studying and really, working with material that you connect with, to be knocking on the door of a 170 kind of range. So
Mhm.
it's always interesting to me when, people haven't seen at least 10 points. Usually you can take 15 or 20 practice tests and you can go up 10 points.
Mhm.
It's not super hard for most people to go up 10 points if they're using the right stuff and doing the right things. What materials have you been using? Have you been using like books, online resources, or is it mostly just like taking tests and
So
looking at
y-
it?
yes, so that's another thing. Like my test prep like has been scattered, right? It hasn't been like like yeah, I would say like when I was initially doing the test prep, I had more availability for myself as well to focus on the test prep. At that time, I
Yeah.
wasn't uh, using a lot of resources. Just uh, more mainly using LSAC and you know a few other free resources, but nothing major. And
Mm.
and uh, yep, my second attempt, again, like uh there was nothing that I did like I didn't do anything differently towards my second attempt. I was actually less available before my second
Hmm.
attempt because of my work and other things. And
Yeah.
my third attempt, I had some more time, to sort of reflect on these strategies that we're talking about, take a more practice tests and and sort of you know try break down different questions. Um, but then again, yeah, it was not like a set, uh, set aside time, like a couple of months, to just focus on the test. So I do
Yeah.
agree that's more, it might be, true that there there might be a gap right over there. But with that being said, I'm also, considering, other larger factors of, making it to the admission cycle, and
Yeah.
um, yep, when it's more appropriate for me to, pursue this, because for me the goal is not to, become like a test wizard like yourself, which I totally admire, but to, actually go to law school and pursue my JD.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's something I think is important for people to understand, is that there are competing priorities when you're in the application cycle, right? The earlier you apply in the application cycle, the better your chances of getting in. Some of the deadlines, this January test that you're taking is the last stop for you to even apply to those schools. But you're balancing that with, like, I need to more time studying is going to yield me a higher score, which is going to then offset that and get me into places that I couldn't have gotten into, or get me scholarship money that I couldn't have got. So I do think it's important that everybody understands that it's not, some of these decisions are difficult to make. It definitely helps if you can be ahead of the game and have your LSAT done by the time you enter the application cycle, which it seems like you had a few attempts at. The other thing that I would recommend is like subscribing to a system, someone's system, right? Because you don't want to be a test guru. You're not, that's not your goal. That's not most people's goal. It wasn't my goal when I was studying for the LSAT, wasn't to do that either. But there are people who have spent a decade or longer. I mean, there's people who've had 3 decades, 4 decades of LSAT experience under their belt, and they've put together really great systems that work really well and give you the context and give you like this extra boost of like efficiency because you're subscribed to a system. You got to find something that works well for you, but I do think it's important to have yourself rooted in a system that somebody did spend years and years developing. Now, whether that's through like a secondhand book from somebody, or through an online course, or through like one-on-one tutoring, there's a lot of different ways to get to there, and it doesn't have to be super expensive. But those are a couple of like my kind of closing thoughts, I think, as we kind of wrap things up. Did you have any other last questions I can answer for you before we get out of here?
Yep, sure. Yeah, I do appreciate we discussed the LR sections in a lot of detail, and I do appreciate that. And feel free to, like, obviously, end the meeting as we're almost approaching towards the end of our scheduled time. But yeah, I also wanted to bring up, 2 more points that I had listed. One of them, again, stems back to LR. We don't need too much to discuss that, in detail. But is that, like, there's often, not enough time to there's not enough time to devote the time that's needed for, let's say, longer questions, and I'm talking about, parallels and flawed reasoning type questions, where
Yep.
I'm not saying that those questions are super complex, but there's the stimulus, and sometimes a lot of times the answer choices are very long, and
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, they almost look like reading comp passages sitting over there. They're so big. Yeah. So a quick recommendation I can make there, if it's a parallel or parallel to flaw, and you see it's this massive wall of text, when I do that, and I recommend this for a lot of people too, if you find that your parallel reasoning questions or parallel to flaw reasoning questions are the same accuracy as all your other questions, or a lot of times they're lower accuracy than the other questions, because you get like this flusteredness about you, because you're like, man, this is taking so long, when you're halfway through that you kind of speed up and then you lose some accuracy. Not that they're more difficult, or like you said, that they're overly complex. They're just time sucks, right? And that can mess with your mentality. So I'll usually tell people, if you see that wall of text and you check the question stem real quickly and it's parallel, flag it and move on. That way you have like 2 or 3 of those that happen. Now, if it happens in the first 12, I would probably just take it on because it's probably easy and it's going to be a point for you. After that, you usually have a couple of them where you can recognize that that's what they are. You waste very little time, like 5 seconds on that question that's flagged, and you're moving on, and then you come back to them at the end. That does a couple of things. It really loosens up your section where you don't feel like the time pressure is hitting you as hard, because sometimes those questions can take 2 minutes, 3 minutes sometimes to do. So if you have 2 of those, that's like that's like 5 minutes you're getting back, or you're taking out of the section, which is a good bit of time. And then you can come back and do them at the end. And that way that you have kind of solidified your section. And these are the last 2 questions that you're going to. And so that time pressure doesn't get into your head as much, and you can kind of think clearly, and then you can solve them. So I would recommend doing that. And you can implement that immediately into your next section and see how it does.
Yep. I've been doing something similar. If it's within the first, in the range of first 20 questions, I might as well. I do attempt it. If it's towards the end of the section, then I've been those are the couple of questions that I've been missing. So like, let's say out of 25, if I'm attempting 22 questions, so most likely I've missed like those parallel flaws, or the longer the questions that you're categorizing as time sucks.
Then I would move that benchmark from question 20 back to question 13. And like anything from 13 on, if it's a parallel, I would skip it, because then that'll give you probably one more that you get to skip. That's one you're probably getting wrong anyways. And then 2, it's going to take 3 minutes, where you could allocate that time to questions 23 and 24 and get 2 more questions. And so you're increasing your score by 2 because you're sacrificing one that you were going to miss already. And then you're picking up 2 extra questions. So I would implement that immediately. And some of the review stuff that we talked about. Unfortunately, we got to wrap now, but I do appreciate you calling in, and hopefully I gave you some insight somewhere. And definitely let us know how the test goes. And if there's anything you need, let me know.
Sure, John. Thanks a lot for your help, and I appreciate your time. And I will call you or reach out to you next when I need my next consultation.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, AP.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.